How to make wheatgrass juice.
Kids, do not do this on your own. Work with an adult. And do not do this project if you are allergic to wheat.
Take a small plate, put a square of paper towel on it, wet it, take some wheatgrass seeds and sprinkle them across the top, and an even layer. Don't dump them all in one big pile. Okay, I'm going to spread them out with my fingers. Looks like I can have some more. You want to have most of the space filled with seeds. If they're a little bit piled up here and there, not a big deal. Just pretty much a flat carpet of seeds. When the seeds sprout and the roots grow, the roots will intertwine with each other and help hold this whole thing together, the grass growing. Next step is to cover it loosely with plastic. If you have plastic wrap or a plastic bag that's at least big enough to cover the seeds, just put it on top. Leave it loose. If you have plastic wrap, same thing. Don't wrap it tightly around the edges, just let it sit on top. The point of this is to slow down evaporation. If you just leave the plate sitting out, especially since you're going to put it in the sun, then the water is going to evaporate so quickly that the seeds will die, or the young plants will die when they start growing. Okay, next we need to move it to an area where there is some sunlight or a plant light, which is an artificial source of light. Place it in a sunny location next to a window, and be sure to include a solar-powered dancing owl. That is a very important step. Okay, that last part was not true, but I still encourage having a solar-powered dancing owl because it's fun. Your next job is just to wait and check on it every day. If you see that the paper towel is drying out, just add a little bit more water. You'll notice I did not fill this up. It's not a pool of water, it's just wet. Put this back on and wait. Pretty soon they'll start to sprout. If you don't have a sunny enough location, or you just want to provide the best possible lighting situation, you can buy a plant light, which I have here in the corner of my kitchen. This is my little wheatgrass growing station. If you do use a plant light like this, it is important not to look into the light, because it's bad for your eyes. Here's some wheatgrass that I've had growing for a little while. Once the wheatgrass is really growing like this, you no longer have to keep the plastic over the top, because the grass itself and the thick roots all tangled together are going to hold in enough of the water to keep the plant growing. It will not dry out too much. So every day, though, you do need to rinse and water it. So you're not just doing this to give the plants water. That part is obvious. They're plants, they need water to live. But you're also rinsing them. You'll notice now that this is really established, it's really well grown, you don't have to worry about them falling off, because the roots are all tangled together holding onto each other, and they are burrowed into the paper towel as well, so it's not going to go anywhere. But not only are you adding water, you're also rinsing. Notice how I do it a couple of times, because if you let the water sit in there, mold will grow. So you want to rinse it out, get fresh water in there every day. After you've rinsed it a couple of times, just turn it sideways, let all the extra water drip off, and you're good to go. Put it back in the light. On the day that you want to actually make wheatgrass, here's what you do. Give it one more rinse, and let it drip off. Okay, once your wheatgrass is a couple of inches or a couple of centimeters high, you are ready to make your wheatgrass juice. here's what you need. Your wheatgrass, obviously, a pair of scissors, preferably a pair of scissors that is only used for making food. If not, make sure to wash them carefully. Make sure they're sanitized. It's got to be clean to use on food. You will need a large funnel with a big coffee filter put inside of it. You will need a paper plate. You also need something to store your wheatgrass juice in. I like to use a mason jar. They're reusable. You could also use a spaghetti sauce jar. Just wash it when you're done and you can reuse it. You also need water to mix with your wheatgrass. That's going to help make the juice. I have a Brita filter here because I like to filter my water. And you need a blender of some kind. I have a little tiny one, but it could be a regular size blender. And you also need a little tiny plastic cat. Okay, that also was not true. But there it is. Because why not? Why not have a little tiny cat while you're making wheatgrass juice? Okay, so how do you actually make the wheatgrass juice? Take your wheatgrass that you have already rinsed and let most of the water drip off. If there's still a tiny bit of water and some drops come on here, it does not matter. Hold the wheatgrass over your plate and just trim it. Don't cut it all the way down to the roots. That is ridiculous. But you are cutting the wheatgrass and letting it fall onto the plate. It's better to make more cuts and have smaller pieces of grass falling onto the plate than making one big cut and having super long pieces of grass fall onto the plate. Why? Because if you do that, it is going to probably clog up your blender. Okay, does not need to be perfect. Notice that I did not cut it all the way down to the roots. Remember, these are living things. Each one of these is an individual plant. It sprouted from a seed, it grew its roots, it is growing back up. This is basically the leaf part of the plant. We call it a blade when it's grass, but it's basically a leaf, and it is making its own food for the plant by using water, sunlight, and carbon dioxide gas. If you cut it all the way down here, there's not going to be enough of the blade left to do photosynthesis and make food for the plant, and it will die. If you just cut a little bit, 1/3 to 1/2, then what you can do is water it again, put it back in the sunlight or the plant light, and let it grow a little taller again. You can usually do this 2, 3, maybe 4 times at most before it's too much stress on the plant, and they usually die at that point. But you can get a couple of servings of wheatgrass juice from it by doing it this way. Just a little off the top, please. I don't want a crew cut. Okay, now you have your wheatgrass clippings. Why did I put them in a paper plate? Because it's going to make my life easy when I put it into the blender. Let me go on this side so I have a better angle. I'm going to pick up the paper plate and I am going to kind of fold it in half because that is going to help me pour it. See, there was a little bit of water. It's dripping out. Okay, no big deal. Drop it into your blender. You don't have to get every last blade. Not a big deal. Just get most of it. Okay? Add some water. Okay, it says max. I can only fill it up to there.
Mr. Walsh, how much water should I use?
Well, I'm glad you asked. You could use 1 cup or 2 cups of water, somewhere in that range. Doesn't really matter that much. So now I have my water and my wheatgrass clippings floating around in there. There are the blades that are going to grind up the grass clippings. And goes onto my blender. I am going to blend it for 30 seconds. I'm looking at the clock. Compelling, isn't it? Meow. you are going to have a nice frothy mixture. The blades will have blended up those grass clippings, wheatgrass clippings, into tiny, tiny little bits. Now you have a mixture of blended up wheatgrass blades and water. The next part is very important. You cannot drink it just like this because all those blades of wheatgrass, the leaves if you will, are still in here. They're just all blended up. They're mostly made of cellulose, and the human body cannot digest cellulose. So if you drink it like this, you're going to get a very sick stomach. So what you need to do is filter it. That's where the jar and the coffee filter come in, and your funnel. Put that in here, and I am going to, it's going to be a lot easier if I actually open the blender. There are the blades that blended it all up. Frothy, frothy.
Smells very much like grass. How interesting.
Okay. I'm going to pour it into here. And wait for it to filter through. You can see that it is dripping out the bottom. The whole thing didn't fit in here the first time, so I am pouring the rest of it now. Now we've just got to wait until it all filters through. While we wait for the wheatgrass to completely strain, please enjoy this entertaining performance. If it were up to me, we'd be making carrot juice. Just saying. Okay, it's pretty much finished straining. This is what it looks like in there. See, these are all the solid parts of the wheatgrass blades that were blended up. They get trapped by the coffee filter, and all of the liquid parts go into the jar. So you now have wheatgrass juice. However, it's better to add water to this. You see how dark green that is? Even that might be a little bit much on your stomach. This stuff is very, very, very good for you, but you don't want to drink too much at once, and you don't want it to be too concentrated. So I am going to add some more water.
How much water should I add, Mr. Walsh?
Well, I'm glad you asked. You should add about the same amount that's already in there. So this is about 1.5 cups, so 1.5 times 2 is 3. So I'm going to go from 1.5 cups up to 3 cups. It does not have to be perfect. It's just a general rule. You're just diluting it a little. That means adding more water. So now you can see the light shines through it a little bit better. It's not quite so incredibly concentrated, and that will be much easier to digest. Your wheatgrass is finished, my friends.
Yay!
Obviously, it needs to be refrigerated or it will go bad. Keep a lid on it, keep it in the fridge, and you will have wheatgrass for the next few days. Cody the cat is begging for food. You already had your food. You didn't like that comment? Okay, so, like I said, this stuff is very, very good for you, but you don't want to have too much at once. It could upset your stomach. Have a little tiny bit. That's all you really need because it's very concentrated green goodness. Just a little bit every day. Really good addition to... Cheers. By the way, it does actually taste like grass. Thanks, Cody. So what is wheatgrass anyway? It is the same plant that most bread is made of, and other products like cereals and stuff like that, they're made with wheat. Believe it or not, wheat is a type of grass plant. So when you make wheatgrass juice, you're making it from the wheat plant when it is first starting to grow, and it's just very small. If you let wheatgrass grow up to be a fully adult plant, it will grow a seed head, and those seeds are what is ground up and made into bread and other products that people eat.
But wait, there's more.
If you want a fun bonus project, you can use the leftover wheatgrass pulp that's left in the coffee filter to make a little tiny piece of wheatgrass paper. Dun dun! How to turn your leftover wheatgrass pulp into wheatgrass paper. Get a patch of screening.
Mr. Walsh, where do I get a patch of screen?
Well, I got mine from just a leftover project at my house, but you could also buy it on Amazon or Home Depot or someplace like that. So I'm putting it down in my paper plate. Take my wheatgrass pulp out. It's caught by the filter. Now I want to scoop this stuff off and put it onto the screen over here. It should just come right off with the friction from your finger rubbing lightly across the paper. I'm going to drop it right onto my screen. Don't worry how it lands right now. You're going to deal with that in a minute. Of course, it's better if you're making more wheatgrass at one time. You'll get a bigger patch of paper. But you're really doing this just because it's kind of cool anyway. It's not something important that we really need. There's the wheatgrass pulp. It's disgusting. It's like a swamp monster. Anyway, the next step is to realize that that paper plate is not going to last. I forgot. I usually use one of these. I haven't done this in a while. So you can see it's all clumped up here. That's not really helpful. So I'm going to go over to the sink and I'm going to wet it, fill up the plate with water, and try to spread it out a little bit. Tapping it with my fingers to flatten it out, spread it out. It's nice and wet right now. And I want it to be just in a little bit of water so that it will let me move it around easily. I want to get it all into one central spot. It's not going to be a perfect square, definitely not, but that's okay. I'll tell you what you can do with that after you're finished. Okay, so I'm pouring off the extra water. I'm tilting it slowly so my wheatgrass pulp doesn't go pouring off the plate with it. And I'm just going to continue flattening it out and spreading it out evenly. Obviously, the more wheatgrass pulp you have to work with, the bigger piece of wheatgrass paper you're going to have. So the interesting thing to remember is that we're making paper out of wheatgrass pulp. The paper that people use on a regular basis every day is made from the pulp of wood, usually. So there you have it. I have it in pretty much a squarish sort of shape. I'm getting rid of the extra water. And the only thing left to do now is to let it dry. So I'm going to either put it in the sun, or you could put it in front of a fan on low, making sure that this doesn't blow away. That might dry it a little faster. Well, luckily for me, I have something very convenient. On the floor in my kitchen, there is a heating vent, and I have a cover on it so that the heat doesn't go straight up the wall. It gets pushed out into the middle of the room. So I have a stream of warm air coming out, and I will just put anything that I want to dry quickly. I'll put it on the floor right in front of this heating vent. The next step now is just to wait until it's completely dry.
Did you remember to clean up?
Oh, actually, I forgot.
And finally, after it has been allowed to dry, you can just peel the wheatgrass paper right off of the screen. And you have a piece of wheatgrass paper. How cool is that? If you'd like it to be square, you can just cut it. Squarish. I'm not going to do a perfect job, I'm sure. And there you have a piece of wheatgrass paper. You can write a little note on it, or you can just save it, because it's kind of cool. Ta-da! By the way, yes, those eggs are from my pet chickens. And you might say, Mr. Walsh, why don't you have your eggs in the refrigerator? Aren't they going to go bad? No, they are not. The eggs that you buy at the store do need to go in the refrigerator. Why? Because they are washed by the farms before they are sent out to the stores. If you have your own pet chickens and you just bring the eggs in every day, you can just store them right on the counter and they'll stay good for like 3 weeks. Why? Because when the chicken is laying the egg, the chicken's body makes a special coating around the outside of the egg that seals it. No bacteria can get in and make the eggs go bad. How cool is that? When they wash the eggs, that removes that protective coating called the bloom and makes it possible for bacteria to enter the egg and make it go bad, which is why you need to refrigerate store-bought eggs, but you do not need to refrigerate homegrown eggs.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.